Welcome to episode 14 of the Carlson Cards podcast. Now, if you are new here, we interview longtime collectors to learn more about their strategies and passions for collecting sports cards. This podcast is not about hobby news, it's not about drama, it is about cards and collecting, and that is what today's episode focuses on. I had a chance to interview my friend Andrew, who just got done setting up at the National for the first time and helping out at a booth. He's working on chipping away at an insane set for football that you're going to love hearing about. He's also very well versed when it comes to soccer collecting. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Ton of different topics and a lot to learn from. Now let's kick it over to the conversation. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 14 of the Carlson Cards podcast. I am joined today by, we'll call it the first friend I made in Wisconsin in the hobby when I moved back. I think that's pretty close to what this is. So we have an Andrew at St. Croix Cards. So a few things I got to say about Andrew before we get started. The dude has got to be one of the most positive people I've met in the hobby. He's very passionate and he's always learning and trying new stuff. So I felt like this would be a really fun episode. A lot of diverse knowledge in terms of even soccer, new sort of set collecting when it comes to football and that sort of thing. So I think it should be a lot of fun. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. So thanks for having me today.
And I forgot to throw in there, I mean, you're a national dealer now. You just were at the National last week. What was that experience like? I guess we'll start with that. What was that like coming in?
I didn't know what to expect. I was first time at the National in Chicago, and I didn't really know what to expect. The place was massive. So if you didn't go to the National, I mean, it's just a sprawling, entity of its own, and so it was kind of nice being not a dealer. I was set up with a slab stocks team, but to be behind the booth and kind of just could convince myself that this little part that I could see was all that there was. Because the moment you got outside of that, it just got to be a lot, and I'm one that maybe sometimes gets a little overwhelmed. And so it was good for me to just have like a home base, and a lot of people came up and saw me, which was super cool. I mean, the community is so amazing, and that's really what this hobby is all about for me. And so the community and getting to meet people that I have talked to years now and never gotten to meet them face to face was incredible. So it was a great experience. But being a dealer too is like, it just is constant all day long, and just waves after waves of people.
What's kind of cool about it is you had like a cheat code. You didn't have any skin in the game, any risk. You got to set up, experience, learn about it. I'm kind of jealous. That does sound
a little, yeah, a little bit. I don't know if I'd say I set up, like, I did have a few cards out there, but for the most part, yeah, it was a learning experience for me. And as an educator, as a teacher, like, I just try to take it in and absorb it like a sponge and learn as much as I can. And it was really great because I've set up at very small shows or smaller shows. And then to kind of get thrust into the biggest show on the planet, and to kind of be like, okay, well, it's either sink or swim. But for me, really, it was just interacting with the people. Everybody's got a different story. Everybody has a different person they collect or why they're collecting. And I just love to hear people's stories. So just the communication, the learning, and just having that time with no time ending, like they come up all day long and you can do it. I had lost my voice by the 5th day. I was like, I gotta rest the voice and get home. But just talking to people and hearing why they're in the hobby is so incredible.
So one thing I found really impressive about your national journey and what you were posting on Instagram, you kept your running streak alive. I was seeing you run like, I don't know, was it like 3, 4, 5 miles every single day or something insane? Could you tell us about your running streak and what that means?
Yeah, so it kind of is a little bit more about myself. I actually lost my job about 6 months ago. And I kind of sat down and thought about, okay, well, how could this go? And if you ever kind of have those bumps in the road in life, like they can go two ways, right? You could kind of go down the dark tunnel and you can kind of get, my addictive personality is going to lead me one direction or another. And so for me, I had been in the hobby for a while, and a lot of it, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I find myself behind a computer, looking at eBay, looking at CompC, looking at a lot of different places, and really sedentary for a really long time. And I thought, after I kind of lost my job, I said, maybe this is a good opportunity for me to use my addictive personality and, see if I could start a running streak. And so I thought, if I could run 2 miles or more a day, every day until I decide to stop, that would be great. And so it was a positive outlet for me. And it was a positive, something, not only physically, but mentally. I do a lot of thinking on those runs, but I also listen to a lot of content on those runs. So killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But I got to the National, it was a head scratcher because I was like, how am I going to do this? But I was able to get up at around 6 a.m. every morning. I got out there before the heat. I got a few miles in. There's a great running trail right there in Rosemont and did that. But it got tough towards the end because not only do you have the full day at the National, like you're setting up at 8, you're done at 6, and then you get about 30 minutes for dinner, and every trade night under the sun starts, and you want to be a part of all the action and all the conversations and all the deals. And so you'd be out super late. And then it was like, okay, I got to repeat this process. So I will be honest with you, probably the hardest to keep the streak alive, but I was able to do it. I think I'm at like 152 days as of today, but I'm shooting. I think the goal now is a year, and then we'll address the situation. But I've been very blessed to stay healthy and not get any injuries or, no nicks or, bruises, and we're good to go. But yeah, so it's super fun to have that streak alive. And I've had so many people reach out in the community. That was the one thing I'm posting on a soccer or sports card Instagram, and people are just checking in and saying, hey, really appreciate what you're doing. Hey, keep up, keep going. Like just the positivity and the encouragement that people give in the hobby too, regardless of it's cards or if it's something that you're passionate about. Like they're usually there to pick you up and push you forward. And for me, I think that's why I'm at 152, because I don't want to say day one, right? You don't want to go back to day one and everybody be like, what happened? But it's been good. It's been good for me physically and mentally.
And I know I haven't mentioned this, but I stole it from you. I mean, I'm only doing a mile a day, but I'm over 30 something. So I totally respect what you're doing. It's crazy, but it's surprising. I've seen like 3 or 4 other guys doing a similar thing. And a few of them I think came from you or off of you or that sort of thing, but it's really awesome.
And I can't take credit for it. I actually, indie card collector Shane, he was the one that started it way back then, and I saw him and I was like, man, and it kind of happened at that perfect time, and I'm like, man, if he's doing that, like I can do that too. And so he actually, maybe without him being aware of it, got me into it, and I've just continued it. And so, shout out to Shane for being the motivation I needed to get off my chair and, looking and out the door. So appreciate him a lot.
Yeah, he seems like a good dude. You got me to follow him, and he seems like a very good dude. So one thing I want to ask about with your running streak, and I'll kind of tie to cards now here. So you listen to a lot of content, especially obviously sports card content. So I'll put it this way, like as a guy who's listened to a lot of different types of content, a lot of different podcasts, what to you is the type of content that is really stuck and you found yourself listening to like every single episode? Do you find a theme with that? Like, just feel free to run with that one.
No, so I do listen to a lot of content. And for me, it really boils down to, I really enjoy hearing people's stories. So like, I would say, I haven't missed an episode of yours, Carl's and podcast. Woohoo. Like, I love it, just because people are so passionate about what they love and what they love to collect. And so those are type of, and even, you've got Brett and Stacking Slabs. Like I listen very regularly to Stacking Slabs as well, just because like the people get on there and they love what they love, and they're not concerned about markets up, markets down. And I do a lot of that, like with the Slapstocks FC show. Part of my biweekly podcast or kind of 15 to 20 minute episode is to kind of chart, who's doing what and how the markets are fluxing. But, and I do listen to some of that, but for me, like to hear people, why they collect, whether it's a player that they, watched growing up, or it's a person that they caught, first year as a rookie, and they're like, this is my guy. And, come hell or high water, I'm going to stick with that guy. It's just incredible. And then you even get kind of ideas of like other sets. Like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's always like a learning experience when people bring up different sets and you're like, wait a minute, what is that set? It's numbered to what? Okay, I need to go look to see what else is there and what else is available and prices and those type of things. So it kind of leads you into kind of your own collecting journey to say, okay, it's a lot bigger than like the tunnel vision I'm in, because I tend to get tunnel vision when I have one player or one set that I'm really driving, and I'm not too concerned everything else. But these podcasts have helped me to kind of keep those, that rear view mirror in check and being like, okay, what else is out there? Is there anything else I should be looking at for the players that I enjoy to collect?
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So speaking of like diving into a set, I got to share my screen here. So maybe I'll put a preface here. So I don't recall exactly how this set chase started, but I know we chatted about it because you had mentioned maybe getting into football or whatever. And then I think you discovered this set or something. I don't know what happened. Yeah. I'd love if you could tell us about the set you're chasing after for football cards, maybe a little bit about the years, the kind of players are in this. What is the details on this set you've been working on?
Sure. So this is, I remember this set as a kid. So I'm a 90s kid into the 2000s. I was in high school. I graduated in 2004, so you can do the math. mid 30s now, upper 30s maybe. But I remember, ripping packs of, as a sophomore of regular Topps, not Topps Chrome. And I had a few of these when I started going through my old collection, because that's how collecting started for me. Like getting back into the hobby was the kind of the typical COVID story. I actually had COVID. I was separated from my family in isolation, so my kids didn't have to miss daycare. And I was in the basement and had nothing to do. All my lesson plans as a teacher were done. And so here I was like sifting through these. And I remember this card, but this is the 2002 Topps Chrome Ring of Honor Refractors. So, and to kind of put, I like shiny things. I think you can relate to that as well. I like shiny. And so one of the things that I quickly noticed, I was starting to look up what my cards were worth. Many of them were not worth much. And I stumbled on the Ring of Honor and I kind of typed it into eBay, and one of these cards had popped up and I was super interested. One of the reasons, I'm a history teacher, that's my background. And so this Ring of Honor set starts with Super Bowl I and runs through Super Bowl 36. And it's every Super Bowl MVP. So if you were a Super Bowl MVP of Super Bowl I, Bart Starr, he's got a Topps Chrome Ring of Honor refractor numbered out of 100. And it's from 2002. And then for subsequent years in 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, they would add a Ring of Honor. So it's not from the original set, but there's a one-card add-on. So you might even find, Peyton Manning, Ring of Honor refractors. And then they started to actually have different subsets. So it might have been out of 199 or out of 50 or, so they kind of started pulling apart. But this is the standalone 2002 Ring of Honor refractors out of 100. There's 36 cards or 36 in the set. But the interesting thing about this set too is if you are watching on the screen or if you're listening at home, there's card number 10 does not exist. And I didn't know this when I started collecting it, but Super Bowl 10, the MVP of that Super Bowl was Lynn Swann. And Lynn Swann, I think, has something where he doesn't have a contract, or Topps does not have the right to publish his cards. And so he's not in any set. So there is no refractor number 10. So really, I believe it is a 35 card set at this point. But I am trying to put this set together. It has been almost 2 years in the process. And I'm not done, but that is the absolute fun of the chase. I can tell you, I started being like, this is going to be, people kept saying, it's going to be super easy. It's not out of 50 or out of 25. You'll find them no problem. But these cards have been 20 plus years since release, and they very rarely come up. And when they do come up, they do tend to go quick. And so I've been lucky enough to snag some of them. But, if anybody is looking at the sticky notes, or you see any or know of people who have them, I am 100% looking to complete this set, because it is now a labor of love. And I check my eBay saved searches every day.
Who do you have left, Andrew?
So there's a couple, like the big ones for me. The Tom Brady is kind of the end all be all. That is Super Bowl 36, 2002. It would have been his first Super Bowl win. And so I'm looking for that one. But a lot of people, and a lot of people wiser than myself said, maybe don't go after the Brady right away, because it's a type of card that will be up for auction or purchase. He's a big enough name, you'll see him a lot. So I've really tried to focus on some of the lesser name guys, but some of the bigger ones I'm missing the Kurt Warner. I have not seen a Kurt Warner since I started this journey. Emmett Smith, I do know of one that is on eBay, but it is quite a bit more expensive than I'm willing to go. Guys like Mark Rippon, Joe Montana has 3. He was a Super Bowl MVP for 3 Super Bowls. So I have 2 of the 3. I'm missing his MVP from Super Bowl 24. And then guys like Phil Simms and John Riggins from the Redskins, and then a few or one no-namer. But those are the tough ones too, because people don't post them or people don't list them because they aren't big enough names. So it's just been so fun. And to watch, you literally get to walk through history with these cards. And that for me is the really fun part, is that, here you start with Bart Starr and you get to kind of watch the teams that kind of rise and fall. in their dynasties, if you will, whether it's the Steelers dynasty, or you see, the 49ers in multiple years, and just the players who played well at the biggest stage. And some of those guys, like even you look at Packers, Super Bowl 31, you had Desmond Howard win the Super Bowl MVP. Everybody would think it's Brett Favre, but here this guy, runs back a kick for the Packers, and scores a touchdown and takes home the MVP. And here he's got a card in the set. So, you're really living history when you're kind of looking through this set. And I just love, this isn't my first picture. Like, I'll tell you, I get them out, and I every time I add one, I need a new picture, and I get to go through them and I get to look at them, and it's pretty great. And it's cost effective. Like, it's not a crazy, super expensive set that you can put together. And that's pretty cool too.
A few quick comments. Part of what I love about this set, and I think we chat about this, I love how Topps Chrome originally, when they started numbering their sets, they were very simple with what they did, right? Like, this one is just a base or a Refractor 100. It's so beautiful. And I know, like you mentioned, later on, they started, like, for Peyton, I think there's like 5 or 6 parallel variations, which makes sense then why you just stick to 02 to keep it simple. But one other thing with this too that I think is just really interesting, like you said, it's like you get to experience and enjoy these players that played, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10 years ago or prior to this set, which is really, really neat. I was going to ask, is there anyone in this set, or as you found players here, that surprised you? Anyone that, like, oh, I forgot about this dude. Like, his story is interesting, that sort of thing. Is there anyone that surprised you on that side of things?
As far as like surprise, no, like one of the things that really stuck out to me, if you start to really look, in the second half of this set. So, from card 18 to 36, the one thing that like kind of really shows just how good of a player he was, I'm going to point out Ray Lewis. The fact that Ray Lewis won Super Bowl MVP and is in this Ring of Honor set, I said is a testament, because what we see today is really like quarterbacks for MVP, quarterbacks, for and you have a slight few variances there, but like he dominated. And the thing that I love about this card too is when you flip it over, it gives you the statistics from what they did in that Super Bowl. So it's not, hey, here's what they did all season. Here, here's their career. It's just, here is what they accomplished in that Super Bowl to get them this award and to get them into this set. And then the final thing is, like, I love early Topps because you're right, it's simplistic. And one of the cool things about it is I love the old gold block lettering or numbering on the back that they put on there. It gets really thin and really kind of like almost computerized. But in these sets, if you flip them over, and I think a lot of people might know what I'm talking about, is it almost is like these block gold bold, where it might even be a little kind of jagged or crooked a little bit, and you're like, this is numbered, this is older. You can almost date it because of what the block gold numbering looks like.
That's super cool. I didn't even think about that, but that totally makes sense. The variation there between numbering and among decades, right? I guess. One question there, Andrew, that comes to mind as well. Let's say someone's listening and they want to, I've enjoyed set collecting now at this point, and as I've started to dive into a few, if somebody's listening and they want to get started and they want to look for a set and maybe start doing this, do you have any tips, maybe anything that you didn't expect and now better for next time? Like any learning lessons to share there with others?
Yeah, I think, for me, it was always at the start, not now, but at the start, I was very much conscious of the previous comps. Mm-hmm. So I would always, and I think we didn't even talk, and I'd reached out to other collectors and I'd be like, oh, this card just came up. Like, should I pay over X amount of dollars? And now it's to the point where I say, you know what, I'm going to get this card. Like, if somebody wants it as bad as I do, it's going to look really good in the end for comp, but I don't even care. Like because there were a few right off the bat, like, and we'll probably talk in just a second, but I did pick up 2 at the National with a little help from my friends because I'm behind the booth. But there was a Jerry Rice about a year ago that I don't know if I should bid on this. I don't know if it should go. And I let it go because I thought it was going too high. And then I thought, I may never see another one of these. I'm sure I will, but I had to wait until the National, until it was staring me right in the face for me to see it again. Like it was almost a year before I was like, here it is again. I'm not letting this one get away. What do you need for it? I'll haggle for it. But if you would have gone back to your full price and asked at the National, I was paying it.
So to tie to your stories there, and I'll ask a question regarding this before we talk about the cards you got at the National here. How much of this and how important was it that you made people aware in your network that you're going after this? Like, how many would you feel out of this that you would not have gotten otherwise, to be honest?
There's probably 6 or 7 that I had help from people, or just, even really, some of my closest friends knew I was putting this set together. I haven't really posted too much about this set in particular. A lot of what I post is soccer, and I love soccer, and it is my passion and my love. But this is a connection to kind of like my childhood. I was diehard Packer fan. I grew up in central Wisconsin. I didn't really do a whole lot of soccer when it was late 90s, early 2000s. I was all in on the football, and this is still my connection to football. And really kind of what drove this is I kind of started this set, had 3 or 4 cards, and then we have a great community in central Wisconsin for card collectors, and more specific football collectors from like 90s, early 2000s. And we all sat down at a local establishment in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and a little kind of brewery, and we said, let's learn about 90s, and I brought like a few cards that I had, but I just soaked it in and learned how great the 90s and early 2000s were. And I left there and I was like, I'm going to complete this set, and this is it, and I cannot wait. And I got so much, I'm so fired up, eBay and looking, it's like ComC, didn't matter. I was going to find these cards. And it was just super great to kind of have that community around you to kind of, again, this encouragement piece. Like, there are times where I'm like, I'm never going to finish this. And then somebody will be like, hey, did you see this card? And they'll post a picture on eBay, and it's like, yeah, I do have that one, but I want that one too. And so I've kind of become a hoarder of these in a way, because if it pops up on eBay, if it's available, what's better than 1, 2, or 3, or 4 of the same card? And you can kind of see in the Photoshop too, like if you're looking at this picture, there's a couple of them that are stacked. So like I do have a few of them, and I have the doubles underneath the cards themselves, because I want to see kind of where I'm at. Because you never know. I mean, if somebody else is trying to put this set together down the line, I can let a second or a third go if they have a duplicate of one I need. So I'm kind of trying to play the long game too, of maybe we can all help each other if somebody else is putting this set together.
So I had to share this too at the National. I'm going to tell this story and see if I fill everything in correctly. So I came over by your booth finally after day 1. It was like crazy, and you were pumped because I think Cards and Sneaks, Andrew, had found one for you. Terrell Davis, is that right?
Yeah, he was fantastic. Like, Andrew texted me and was like, hey, do you need this one? And I mean, we were too deep at slab stocks, and I looked at Aaron and I was like, I gotta go pick up a card. And he just sent me the booth number. And so then I couldn't find the booth number. Like, it was weirdly numbered. And then I got to the booth and I literally had to like stick my phone in the guy's face and be like, do you have this card? And he's like, no, I don't think we have that card. And I'm like, look underneath that card. Like, this is your booth. Where is this card? Like, I need this card. And Andrew was great. I think he had slid it under like in a second or third in the stack. So I was able to pull it out and make a deal. Again, very close to what he had for it. Way over what the last one had done. Didn't care. Here's my money. And I was good. So I had one already, and I was explaining to you, here I have one.
Yep. And then I ran away literally 3 booths down from you guys. There was just a Jerry Rice sitting there. I'm like, what the hell are the chances? I've looked at so many shows for you too, and the only time I found any was from somebody bringing cards to my booth to sell cards, which is super random as well. This is really funny, and I'm sure that Rice is a big one for the set too.
Oh, it's huge. Like, I mean, and there's so many, like, you can kind of look at this set and see, like, there are Montana collectors, there are Rice collectors. And so when some of those cards come available, it's not just people who are like, I'm a Ring of Honor set collector. It's, I want this for my personal Jerry Rice PC, because like 2002 is still pretty early, numbered to 100. Like, people want to put those in their collections, and rightfully so. They're absolutely beautiful cards. I love them. And so like, it doesn't like hurt my feelings when people are like, I bought that card and I get outbid. And like, it's almost like that card deserves to go to a home where it's going to be appreciated and people are going to be very excited to own it. But that means that there's a little bit more competition. So the more known the player, like the Brady or the Montanas or the Rices, or even, the Steve Youngs or John Elways, like, there is a little bit more of competition. So to find the Rice in a case, 3 booths away from me, you finding it, and you're like, I thought you were kidding. I thought you came up to me like, yeah, I fun of Jerry Rice. And I was like, ha, funny. Like, that's the one I really would like to check off the list. And it was sitting right there. Was able to make a deal and get a little bit off of what they were asking. But again, if he would have said no deal, it's either this or I would have paid it. It's to that point now.
Thanks so much for sharing. It's fun seeing this set, and I'm excited how far you've gotten to. It's crazy to think from like even a couple months ago to now. I'm excited for this to finish up.
Me too. But it could take, I mean, like that's the fun about this is like, you don't know if it's going to take 2 weeks or 2 years or 20 years, depending on what you can find. But the best thing about social media is that people are looking. So if anybody's out there, if you do have these or know where they are or have people who are willing to move theirs, please don't hesitate to reach out. Cause I would always love to talk this set, or if you have any questions on the set in general, just shoot me a quick DM.
Perfect. So now we'll jump over to another photo, a couple that you gave me. So this is an interesting story. I'm going to be honest. You always mention this guy, Brooks Lennon. And I don't know if it's bad that I didn't know who the guy was, but I didn't know who he was.
That's okay.
And then you told me the story about who he was. And
Yeah.
I was very intrigued by how you started collecting him. So could you share a little bit about who Brooks Lennon is and why you collect his cards?
Yeah. So I got to preface this with, I've been a teacher for, 13 plus years. And one of my stops in teaching, I taught 5 years in a school in Phoenix, Arizona. And so, but at that time I was still I was just shifting into this kind of, I really love soccer. I'm all in. And this is at about 2013, 2014. I had kind of followed a little bit here and there. I'd kind of kept track of one team, and that was Arsenal. But it was the kids at this school who were so passionate about soccer. As a teacher, you want to just find an avenue to relate to them, right? You want to find an avenue where, you could walk in and talk, the soccer stars of the day and develop that kind of relationship. And so one of those students, when I was my first year at the school as an 8th grader, was Brooks Lennon. And so for me, personal collection, PC, is really something that sticks out to me. And so when I got back in the hobby, I said, my personal collection, I'm going to have a personal connection to the people that I collect, whether, I've met them and I sat down and I had a really great conversation with them, like an athlete or, somebody in, pop culture. But when I started getting back into collecting, Brooks had kind of gone through. He played for Real Salt Lake. I kind of watched his career there. Before that, he had a little bit of stint at like Liverpool's youth academy over in Europe, and so he was over there for a little bit. Then he was at Real Salt Lake, and then he moved to Atlanta United. And he had a few cards. He had a 2019. It's called Topps flagship, and it was 22 players under the age of 22. And so there was some color floating out, but nothing like Topps Chrome or Topps Finest. And then these two sets came out, and I said, you know what? I'm going to collect. I'm going to get every rainbow. I'm going to collect every card I can find. I am going to be a Brooks Lennon super collector. And I explained it to people. People are like, I PC Brooks Lennon, and they're like, who's Brooks Lennon? I'm like, right back for Atlanta United. How do you not know? Like, but it's super fun because there is that personal connection. So I've been working on the rainbows here. I know Topps MLS is just about to release their 2023. So I'm pretty sure he'll be in that product. I haven't seen a checklist yet, but this has been kind of the last year of work, and it has been work because of just when you get players like Brooks Lennon, they aren't players like Chicharito, or they're not Messi, or they're not, these high profile MLS stars. So they don't always get listed on eBay or, so I find myself in Facebook groups, whether it's MLS or Upper Deck groups or Topps groups that are, posting what they've pulled. I do find myself kind of navigating to play to breakers who do a lot of MLS product and letting them know, hey, I'm a collector of Brooks Lennon. If the Atlanta United spot hits one that's low numbered, I would love to talk about purchasing it if they're willing to sell. Trying to find any avenue I can to get these cards. Now, for the one Topps Finest, just the super. I'm just down to the super. And I tell people, like, if you have it or where it is, I am going to pay stronger than anybody else. I will pay more and give me the offer. Be honest with me. Give me the offer, and I will make it worth your while, because that is the card that I need to complete the rainbow there. And then the Topps Chrome, I am missing a few of the lower number one. I've never seen an orange, a red, and I have seen the super, but that's a different story for a different day. Was not able to acquire it. Still brokenhearted about it after a little over a year ago, but we move, and that's the fun about collecting. You never know when the cards are going to pop up again.
I love the visuals here. Like you have, for those on the podcast, not with the visual on YouTube, he has all the cards laid out. then he has sticky notes for the cards he's missing, which I love because it's kind of that a reminder of, oh, what I mean? You got to put those things in front of you and like wish them into fruition almost.
Absolutely. And I actually have I have doubles, triples, quadruples, like of all of these, as many as I can snag, I will. But on the 2-row that I have all of my Brooks Lennons kept in, I keep those sticky notes right in front, so I know exactly which ones I'm missing. So when I come down to my office and I look, I mean, I will find myself see it and be like, oh yeah, I haven't checked eBay in like 2 hours. I should look to see if it's there. But you never know, you just never know. And that's the beauty of the hobby. And that's the beauty of the people in the hobby is I've had so many people reach out and be like, do you need this one? And I'll be like, oh, I have it, but I will purchase that one from you because I'm excited. So, just those type of people who get set collecting, who get, or understand this idea of like, I'm collecting something not to resell it. And don't get me wrong, I do some of that as well. But like this part of my collecting is once it's here, it's not going anywhere. It's here and not anybody's going to come knocking and be like, hey, can I get a couple Brooks Lennons? Maybe not. But if they did, like I would sit there and be like, I'd almost have to vet them to be like, why do you want these cards? Because I think that they're so important to me and they mean so much to be able to, in a way, long ago and far away, but to be still like a teacher and be able to sit there and be like, I still want to support my students and all their hopes and dreams and aspirations that, kind of collecting a few of their cards and some of these cards, it's my way of still tracking their career, still wishing them the best and still, saying, what, you pursue your dreams and great things can happen. And here Brooks Lennon is continually playing for Atlanta United and Major League Soccer. And that's pretty incredible to me.
Oh, that's so cool. I really like the connection as a teacher. I mean, it ties to your personality and, what matters to you. And it's just really neat. I did have a question regarding this compared to the set we just looked at. Regardless of the fact of the fact that it's Brooks Lennon, do you have a preference on the set collecting or player collecting? Which is more satisfying to you?
I would say the player collecting is a little bit more satisfying, but again, it comes back full circle to like my PC is a personal collection. So there is a personal connection between the player that I collect and it kind of is that crossroads or that overlap of like, I have my career as a teacher and then I have my passion for sports cards. And this is the one place that they kind of overlap. And this is, so when I could pick up like mail days for me are awesome. Like when it's PC mail days, like it is, you get that notification. I don't know if anybody else does, but your item has been delivered. And I will be out at the mailbox. Like I'm beating my own kids to the mailbox. And it's like, okay, which one is here today? Which one did I get? And they like looking with me too. And so that's super fun too. But like when it's PC day, it's PC day. And I am super excited about it.
So speaking of the kids, how, and maybe we'll get in this a little more when we get to your Mount Rushmore in a second, but how have you tied them into your collecting? Do they get excited about Brooks Lennon or are they more into these different kind of cards? I know we've chatted a little bit about it, but I'd love to hear a little more of how you've pulled them in on this.
Yeah. So, I don't want to force anything. Like my passions are, maybe not the same as their passions, but I do expose them to the cards that I collect. They know I go to card shows. And so when I really go to card shows, my daughter is going to be 7 here in October. And one of the things I really, I always ask them when I go to a card show, like, hey, what do you want dad to pick up for you? And right now it's colors. So she'll be like, pick up a pink one, pick up a purple one. Or it'll be, something to the tune of, we've been kind of getting into the 2022 Weiss Schwartz, Disney cards, or Pixar cards. So she'll be like, find a Buzz or find a Woody. And so it's fun for me then, because then I'm on a different kind of hunt, right? Or, her big thing is a couple months ago, the big thing for her is there are some cards that have fireworks on it. Panini Prism does this kind of insert that has, fireworks in the back, and she loves those. So she'll be like, find a fireworks card. Easier said than done at card shows, not gonna lie. But it's super fun because then I ask, and then my son is starting to get into, he's going to be 5 in October, and he's starting to get into the superheroes. So he'll ask for like Spider-Man or, Batman or, so those are kind of some fun ones too, because there's some new sets out that, some of the Marvel stuff isn't super priced. And for them, it's just the base cards. Like they just like to get out and they look at it. And I posted it maybe a couple weeks ago. My son had quiet time in his room at around lunchtime just after. And I walked in and all of his cards were spread out on his bed. And I said, what are you doing with all his cards? He's like, I just like looking at the pictures. And then he just like bolted out the door and he was down the hall. Like attention span for a 4-year-old boy is just not there. And it was one of those moments for me in the hobby where it's like, man, it is about the cards and keeps me very centered. But they're starting to learn, like I'll show them the back of cards and show them the numbering and try to explain to them like, hey, this one is 1 of 5, meaning there are only 5 in the whole world. And so they're starting to understand like scarcity and rarity. They haven't, I've asked them both of like, hey, do you want to come to the card show with me? And they've been like, no, you're there too long. Like, so we quite haven't gotten to that hurdle, but I'm excited because my son is already starting to, I went to the national, said, what do you want me to look for? And he said Mbappe. And I was like, oh, we're making inroads. He picked a soccer player to ask me to find. And so I did find one and we brought it home and showed him and it was good. But yeah, it's super fun to have them as a part of the journey. Because I think that, I see even dads with their, 10, 11, 12-year-olds walking around with their cases at the national too. And it was like, or even at local shows. And I'm like, it would be super cool to share the passion and to share the love I have of not only the cards, but bigger than that, like to share the passion I have for this community and the people in it. To be able to share that with my kids would be awesome. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know. But I'm very hopeful that they will want to be a part of it at some point.
I'm glad you touched on the card shows. That was gonna be a question I ask, and that makes sense. So I'll put it out there. We've went to shows together. I have the most fun when I go with you because I don't know, for whatever reason, you just are beaming from ear to ear, running into those shows. Meanwhile, I'm a guy who sometimes I think I get a little in my head of I got to find something or it wasn't worth the drive. I think way too much about the money involved, right? And like, I'm spending gas to go here, getting dinner, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for people who sometimes get caught in the weeds like myself or anyone who's listening? Like, how do you keep that positive attitude and just go in and, have a good time even if you don't pick up a card?
I think the number one thing for me, and I don't get me, I love cards, but going to shows and getting to actually talk face to face to the people that you have kind of developed relationships for, like I go for the conversation. And I stay for, and then I'm there for the cards, like I'm there, like first and foremost, like I know no matter what, I'm a soccer guy in central Wisconsin. If I'm going to a show, there is a slim to none chance I'm going to run into anything that I'm like, this is what I got to have. But I know when I'm going to a show, I'm going to have 8 to 10 conversations with great people about cards that they love, about cards in their cases and the stories behind them. And so when I leave, like I genuinely am filled up in the sense of like, wow, I learned about this card today, or man, I saw a card that guy, even if I paid 50 times what it's worth, he would never part with it. Like, and this is the story why, or, every story is different. And I think it's like being a teacher, like every day in the classroom is different. You never know what story or what kids are going to do or say, or what kids are going to, conversations you're going to have. And so it's the same thing at a card show. Like you never know. And like the bonus is you find that card you're looking for. But if you don't, it's like, I'm in my 30s and I'm hunting cards. It's like a scavenger hunt, right? Where you're at a show and you're like, okay, what can I find? What am I looking for? Can I get it done? Like, you get to be a kid essentially at card shows. Like for 5 days at the National, like all we did was eat, sleep, and breathe sports cards. Like who can say that? Who can do that? Like, we're pretty blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah, you got that right. I need to remember that sometimes, but I totally agree. When you feel that, you really feel that, I would say for sure.
Yeah. It's one of those things too, is like, and don't get me like one of the things at the National, like I was looking at like my collection and I didn't do a good job of this. Like I saw all these people come up to the table with their collections and like I walked away like super pumped, was so excited. And then I was like, man, I am the tiniest fish in a massive, massive pond. And like my collection, and then I started to do like my collection isn't like so-and-so's collection or so-and-so's collection. And I really had to take a step back and through some like talking it out with some friends, they were like, your collection shouldn't be like somebody else's collection because it's your collection and you shouldn't compare your collections because what are you comparing? Are you comparing price points? Are you comparing dollar amounts? Like, yeah, they've got a really great shiny Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, but you have a really shiny Brooks Lennon. Like that brings you joy and you love it. And yes, it might not be the same, if you were to sell it, you're not going to make them up, but you're not selling it. So just love your collection, curate your collection. And for me, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It goes back to running. Like you put in the work each and every day. And, after 150 or 300 or, 600 days, like your collection is going to look very different if you put in the work each day.
Compound interest is a hell of a thing.
There you go.
So now, Andrew, we will jump over to your Mount Rushmore, the pillar of these podcasts at this point. I unintentionally created this trend, and now we're going to do it every episode, but I love it. So I was wondering if you could step me through your Mount Rushmore. Feel free to start on whichever card you want. The only thing I ask is to please describe what we're seeing for the person on the podcast who is listening.
All right. Well, we spent a lot of time talking about the Topps Chrome Ring of Honor Refractor set. So I did pick one out of there, and it is the Super Bowl I MVP. That would be Bart Starr. I'm a massive, massive Packer fan, so I love the Packers, and so I thought it was great to start. This is a PSA 9 of Bart Starr, and a lot of these haven't been graded. I think this might be a Pop 1 or Pop 2, very, very low in its pop count. But I thought, if you were going to start and had to have a Mount Rushmore card for the Ring of Honor, easy to put the Brady up there. I don't have the Brady, so it can't be on the Mount Rushmore. But here, like, just the historical significance of Super Bowl I, the first MVP of any Super Bowl is Bart Starr, and he just so happens to be a Packer. And so, like, it's kind of like the perfect match. And I thought, this card, if I have to represent the set as a whole, this would be my card. This would be the card that does it. And I do have 2 copies of this. I actually have a BGS 9 8.5 that I'm thinking about maybe needs to be removed. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one yet. But that one was one that I picked up a while ago. But then I picked up this 9, and I was like, beautiful 9. Just is so pretty. And I love, you can kind of, if you're not watching like just those early refractors, like just the color and how it bounces off the card is absolutely gorgeous. So really pumped to have that, and super cool to be able to put that in the collection and keep building that set out.
I love the fact that Star does not have many cards like this at all, at least that I'm aware of. And what I really like about it, it's obviously non-playing years, but it ties specifically to a very important part of his career, which is that, Super Bowl MVP, the big games, which I just think is really cool. I think it's a very fitting card. If you're going to collect a Star card, this is a very neat one to me.
Yeah, and the same thing, because he's also the Super Bowl MVP for Super Bowl II. And so he has a second one in this set. But for me too, like I think you touch on a great point. I'm not one that usually jumps in and is like, oh, it's non-playing years, I still want it. Usually I'm like, you know what, if it's in their playing days, like I'm game. It would take something really big for me to say non-playing years to be like, okay, I want that card. But here it ties directly to an event. Like, this is not like, hey, it's just a Bart Starr. No, this is in remembrance. All of them really are of the Super Bowls of the past. And I think that's just, for me, like, I can't get enough of it. So, to be able to commemorate and remember, like, if you're a football fan now, like, I would hope you're looking back to be like, okay, who are the big names in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s? Because, in 20, 30 years, we're going to be looking back being like, okay, well, where does Mahomes fall in the big picture? Where does Trevor Lawrence fall in the big picture? And people are still going to be there. And, being the first one, doesn't matter. We could be at Super Bowl 80 and we're going to be like, yeah, but Super Bowl I, Bart Starr and the Green Bay Packers won that first Super Bowl.
The legend.
The legend. Yeah. So and the legend only continues to grow, the farther away you get from an event. So
I will say it's a cool thing. Jen and I my wife went, and I went to a game. It was one of the last games I think he came to. It was with Rodgers, and I think Favre was there too. So he couldn't, he's obviously older. I think they had him come out on a card or something. It was really, really neat. So I still remember that, which is kind of neat. I'll always have a connection to Starr through that.
Well, then you got being completely honest, Packer fans have been extremely blessed to have, Bart Starr, but then you've also had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and this whole, very high quality quarterback play for years. You hope it continues with Jordan Love, but you just don't know. And so, like, I guess for me too, it's kind of, you hope it's not like, hey, I'm remembering the good old days. But for a lot of these, these cards, it's just, remembering those seasons and people are still around to be like, oh yeah, but that, like that Bears team that won the Super Bowl, that team was special in the 80s. And then you hear them talk about it. It opens so many conversations. When I tell people I'm putting this set together, they'll be like, explain to them the set and they'll be like, oh, well, then this person's in the set. And it leads them into a whole story about, I went to a game and I saw Montana play, and it's just super cool. And I love hearing people's stories. And that's part of what this set has brought me, which is more, just icing on top of the cake.
It's the best kind of set, best kind of cards when they're conversation starters. Perfect. Yep. What's the second card here you want to talk about in the Mount Rushmore then,
Okay, so
Andrew?
this kind of fits into like, if it's a PC or Mount Rushmore, the first one is kind of that set. The second one is kind of the family piece. 2022, Weiss Schwartz released a Pixar set. This is before like the Kakawa and like all the Disney stuff or even like the Lorcana stuff was coming out. But there's super great imagery in these sets. And my kids are all in on Pixar. They love Cars. They love they love Moana. They love, you fill in the blank, and even Disney, Beauty and the Beast, Toy Story, all of these, fun shows that I get to rewatch as an adult now with them. And, can we watch a movie? And it's like, yeah. And you hope they pick the one that I want. Right. But some of the set here, you have your base cards, you have your, kind of your rare cards. And then there's two subsets where they have a short print, and then they have an SSP or super short print. Well, sometimes I like to go through eBay and kind of look to see what they have. And I show the pictures to my son, especially. And this is the one that he was like, I need to have Mater and Lightning McQueen. Like, that's the card I want. Now, it is an SSP, so it was not cheap in my terms, like in my budget, it was not cheap, but I was able to get it raw on eBay. And so I was able to finally find one that was, okay, this is in my price point. Got it. He was stoked and through the moon, and he loved it and wanted to hold on to it and, grab it and do all this stuff. And he's 4. And I was like, you know what, we should probably get this graded. And so I really do like how SGC looks with these cards. So I sent it off to Aaron at Slabstocks, who submits through SGC, and it came back a 10, which I was super pumped about. Didn't really matter the grade, because really now I can feel pretty confident handing it to my son and say, hey, here's your card. And he does, like, he'll want to look at it. He'll come down and, I'll open up the Zion case and we'll pull it out and he'll take a look at it. And sometimes we'll just sit and look at some of them. We have a few more than that, but this is everything that is like collecting with my family. And even like in the future, like just, we do Sunday night movie nights at our house we've done it since the pandemic, where, cause you couldn't go anywhere, but you could definitely, Sunday night was movie night for us. So each week, each person gets to pick, a different person picks the movie, and we get to sit down and watch it as a family. So I think for me, this is more of like nostalgia. 20 years down the road, when my son's 24, I'm going to pull this card out and like think of all the times that I was, a dad and he was 4 or 5, getting stoked over, Mater and Lightning McQueen. So this is more like sentimental to me, like on my Mount Rushmore, because it's just it means a lot to me. So
I kind of like these sets too, because they're like almost intermediaries, or like what do you call it? Like you get something into something through something else. Like they might be into the Pixar cards, then they progress into sports cards or whatever. Like for me, my wife, you've actually gifted me, I think it was some Harry Potter cards, and she loves them. And it's funny how then after that, she starts taking an interest maybe in the sports a little bit. Oh, maybe you could go find me an Eric Decker card because I find him good looking, which to me, it's like, okay, I'm not sure I'm going to go find you one now, but no, just kidding. But
that's good for me to know, right? Now I'm on the hunt, right?
Yeah. No, that's funny. But one thing too, I like the fact that you tie so much of your family with these, because I think, and I don't know everyone else, this is just what I saw with kind of these sets. My dilemma or stigma was always, oh man, I'm seeing a lot of like 40, 50-year-old dudes just going all over these cards who want to buy them because they can make money off them. But it's nice to see that you found a great niche with these, where your kids are so into it and you can find them and, have fun with them, which I think is really, really cool. I think that's kind of the dilemma with a lot of this stuff, is there's money involved, which always makes it hard.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize too that, for me, what I've learned over the last 2 years in the hobby is, yeah, you do have some people that it is about money, and that's great. Like I more power to you if you can continue to do that in the hobby. But there's also a lane of collectors, right? There's also a lane of collectors, and there's also kind of this hybrid person that, for me, when I got in the hobby, like I said before, like if I go all in on something, I go all in. And my wife is very wise and much wiser than me. And the first question she asked when I was like, I'm going to get back into sports cards, and she said, how are you going to fund it? Like, how is this going to come out of, how are you going to pay for the cards that you had? And we had a sit down meeting before I ever even started cards. And I said, okay, I have an old collection from my childhood. I'm going to sell the cards that are worth anything. And that is going to be my card money. It's going to, I opened a separate account, like all of my money flows through that account. It doesn't mess with the family's account, and so for me, from day one, it was kind of like I can only spend, like when I say things are out of my budget, it's because, there's only so much money in that fund. And so I have to be really kind of pick and choose and be careful on what, and so it is a balance, because if I go all in on these personal collections or only just like cards that are never going to move, well, sooner or later, my budget is going to be gone and I'm going to have some amazing cards, but then I'm missing out on a hobby that I love, and I care about. So it's just this balance of, I do sell, cards to fund other cards, but all the money that I make just generates right back into the hobby. And so, because I want to be in this for the long term, so I've got to make decisions here and there. And that's why it's sometimes difficult, because, do I want to buy that Tom Brady Ring of Honor and take a huge chunk out of my funds, or do I want to wait a little while, see if that fund can grow, and then it won't hurt as bad as I pull it out towards the end. So
I love that you talk about the hybrid part of it, because that's obviously totally how, if anyone's listening has seen my videos here or podcasts even, that's obviously how I've grown my collection, is a hybrid mix of grading and selling more common cards and then buying the rare ones for my collection. I know you've done some of that as well, but I think that's what's awesome about it. And I've noticed as well, and, feeling this from talking to you, if you love the cards, I feel like you do a better job of this whole thing, this whole process of, you have a better idea of what's collectible. You have a better idea of what people actually want, not what's going to be, pop 30,000. No one's going to want a year from now, right? You kind of have a better gauge of that, which I think is really neat. And you kind of touched on a little bit there.
Well, and I think it's important too, especially from the soccer world. I know we've talked a lot about, the Ring of Honor, and I know we've talked a lot about, kind of the family, the Weiss Schwartz set. But that's a lot of the questions I have. Like I do set up pretty regularly at the Stevens Point show. And usually I'm one of the only people in the room with soccer or lots of soccer. And a lot of the times it's really an education piece, because people know basketball, football, baseball, even hockey in Central Wisconsin. Like they know that, and they'll see soccer and they'll be like, oh, I don't really, but they might see a card where they were like, I want that card. And then it's a conversation of like, well, why do you want that card? Do you know that player? Do you watch that player? Like, let me, because that's the big thing for me is there's so many people in this hobby that are new. And I forget that, because now, I remember what it was like to be the new guy and be like, what the heck is Panini? I'm a Topps kid. Like, where is this coming from? But I think it's so important to educate new people into this hobby, because it's really easy to make one bad choice, to lose money, and then all of a sudden have it, and then you're out of the hobby. And that's not what we want to grow this. We want people to feel a part of this fantastic community. We want to pull people in. So for me, it's always kind of this education piece of like, why do you want that collector? What are you thinking about? What are you going to do with it? Like, I'm genuinely interested to know, like, if you're going to buy this from me, like, are you a collector, or, do you see something that I don't, or do you just, love the player, or is this going to be easy to move to a friend that has the card that you want? Like, it's super fun to learn why people pick and choose and buy what they buy. So
you can always learn from everyone. I've noticed that for sure.
Something. Yeah.
So what's the third card you got here that you want to talk about?
Okay. So the third card is the 2018 Panini Prism World Cup Kylian Mbappe. This is the Hyper Prism. So 2018 Kylian Mbappe. I love Kylian Mbappe. He's kind of fallen under fire. He's at Paris Saint-Germain, which is a team in France in Ligue 1. And he's not signing a contract extension, which means he's got a year left on his contract. And so if it runs out, he can just leave the club for free. He's worth a lot of money. So there's a lot of, kind of stuff around him right now, but young, talented, very, very good. 2018 was the year he won the World Cup for France. So he scored in the final of the World Cup. And he was one of the youngest, I think he was a teenager at the time, whether he was 19, I think is what he was, and won the World Cup. And he's been on the kind of the forefront of this next generation of soccer after Messi and Ronaldo. And so this is a really special card to me, just because of what he was able to accomplish and this is a PSA 9, but what he was able to accomplish in that World Cup. Fast forward to just the World Cup last year, he really kind of carried his team to the final, where he faced off against Messi. Scored a hat trick in the final. They ended up losing on penalties, but he kind of plays at the biggest stage. I love watching him play. His speed, his power. He is just an assassin in and around the box. Fantastic player. Had to be on my Mount Rushmore. as one of my favorite cards. I do love the set as well. 2018 Panini Prism set is pretty good. It was the second time Panini had put out a World Cup set. So the 2014 set is super iconic, and there's a lot of, chasing those cards. And this was their second go around. They also have the 2022 Prism. So they really have only done, they pull out these World Cup sets every 4 years, which I think it makes them extremely collectible, especially to the players that win, or personally to me. So 2018 was great. I don't have any of his 2022 stuff, but, in the back of my mind and going, okay, when do I pick up a Messi from 2022? Because I think it's great to commemorate who won the World Cup that year. But yeah, great young star. If you don't know, most people at this point know who Kylian Mbappe is. But just a great player, and I really, really love this card. Now, it's a Mount Rushmore, like, would I love to get a 10, or he's got numbered stuff out of this? Someday I'll move in that avenue. But my Mount Rushmore, I like to say, is still being built. You never know what might come and what might be on there as well.
So how much of Mbappe's market is comparable to like a guy like Patrick Mahomes? Like, I look at him from football and it's like, okay, I'd love to own his cards. He keeps doing crazy things, but his market, it's like they expect, like, it's almost priced in as if they're going to be like a 5-time champion. And he goes and does win a Super Bowl and like nothing happens and his cards go down. Like, is Mbappe to you a guy? And I think you already hinted at it a little bit. Is he a guy to you, or maybe you look back in 10 years and buy cards because once the hype kind of dies down? Is that part of his market, you think?
I think there is some of that in there, but like the interesting fact is, like, he still plays in a league that isn't kind of looked at as like the elite league.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So he's in France. He plays for PSG, and now there's a big tournament in Europe that's called the Champions League. So the best of every league get together and play a tournament in the Champions League. PSG has not won that. He has not won that. The MVP award for the MVP for NFL, the Ballon d'Or is for soccer. He has not won that award yet. And so he has, so he's doing things that are fantastic and great and phenomenal. And having that World Cup is massive, because you got players like Ronaldo that don't even have a World Cup. Mm-hmm. And he was, a penalty shootout tipping in his direction to win 2 in, back-to-back World Cups. So he's definitely in the upper echelon, but I think it's going to be, Mbappe. I mean, people talk Kylian Mbappe, Erling Haaland are the two big kind of young strikers or goal scorers that we're going to see probably moving forward. But yeah, there's ebbs and flows too, because the seasons do tend to be really long. Like we're going to start here in about a week for the Premier League or for soccer season, and that runs all the way until May. And then you get like a kind of a summer off. But if there's a European tournament, the Euros, then they play in the summer. And then if it's a World Cup summer, they're going to play in the summer. So like soccer kind of happens year round. And so it kind of does, as people get tired or, maybe don't have as big of a focus, you do see some ebbs and flows, but for the most part, his sought after stuff, his really kind of low numbered or rookie stuff is pretty out of my price range. And so someday, but not today.
Perfect. Makes sense. What's the fourth card here on the Mount Rushmore?
So this is the lowest numbered card I currently own of Brooks Lennon. So we talked about him being my PC. This is the red out of 5 from Topps Finest of 2022. It's not graded yet. Again, it's PC, so it doesn't matter to me if it's graded. Maybe when all is said and done, I'll grade 1 copy of every card just to kind of protect them. But this is the red out of 5. And it was really, a funny story. I mean, it's an eBay story. I was on a work trip. I was traveling in the car and I had pulled off to the side of the road to like I was coming home. It was a quick trip, pulled in, and I was like, oh, I should just check. And bang, there was the red out of 5. And I don't know about your save searches, Austin, but like, do they come like they're specific enough, but like you don't really know what it is until you click on it.
Yeah, I would say that. Or you pull in like you're looking for 2013 select golds and you get 2023 mosaic golds for no reason.
Yeah. but so you're gonna, but there's that brief moment. So like I put in Brooks Lennon, Topps Finest, 2022.
A very specific search.
So, but when the blue dot hits, you don't know if it's a base card or if it's a red out of 5. So usually I'm like, oh, yep, here's another one. Click. Oh, look, it's a silver refract. Oh, it's a silver. Okay, no big deal. But I was on this work trip, quick trip, and I was like, I had just checked before I left, and I was like 2.5 hours into my trip, and I was like, oh man, there's one there. Boom, red out of 5 in my face. And then I was like, I can't go anywhere. Like I got to get this deal done. So like I'm trying to work. I submitted like it was with Brooks Lennon, I don't feel like the buy it now is going to get hit immediately. And it was priced pretty high. I mean, pretty high for a red. And so I submitted my offer, and then it was like, it took everything in my being. Like, I'm driving and I'm like, I shouldn't look at my phone. I shouldn't look at my phone. We finally get home, and then we were able to interact, but that was another couple hours. But we finally reached a price on the Brooks Lennon red. And for me, that was huge because that had kind of, and that was a couple months ago now, where I was like, okay, I have the red. Now I'm down to just the super, which, I was hopeful. I don't, did you partake in any of the Panini National or the national packs tops?
I did not. No, I did not touch any yet.
Okay. Well, part of the deal was if you wanted national packs, you had to buy product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of those products was Topps Finest MLS. And so I was really, really hopeful that somebody was going to go through the process of getting those national packs to open Topps Finest MLS and pull that so I could buy it. But it didn't happen. So whether somebody pulled it and I just am unaware, I have never seen the super. Again, if you have this, if you know where it is, please let me know. I know it's a Brooks Lennon, and I know you're probably not eyeing it up, but you can't miss a super when you come across it in a case. And maybe if you hear Brooks Lennon's name enough, you're going to see it and be like, I know a guy.
It's like that trick. You keep saying the name, it's going to resonate with everyone listening. There you
go. Absolutely. Yeah. So those are my four, and like awesome. What I love about, the Mount Rushmores of things is that, it can, in collecting, it can change and it can flow, but those currently are my Mount Rushmore, and I love them.
Yeah. Unlike the real Mount Rushmore, we can change what's on them.
Yeah, right. There you go.
Swap a card around. All right, Andrew. So we'll wrap up here with a fast five. So typically these are just really quick questions. Honestly, it's kind of like a give me the first thing that comes to your head. So are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. So percentage chance as the new principal at a high school, right? Or at
element like a K-8.
So first, again, congrats on the new job.
Hey, thank you.
Percent chance you start a card club at the school?
Probably 85%.
Okay.
I'll feel it out first. Like, well, we got to make sure we got kids who are interested. But if there's interest there, I am definitely willing to share the passion.
So then if you could own an MLS team in Wausau, Wisconsin, what would the name and logo be? So like I should say name and mascot. Do you have a quick one that comes to mind? Like the Wausau blank, because you're from the Wausau area. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, maybe like the Wausau Woodsmen, kind of are the gateway to the north. Like, a lot of people go through Wausau to get to like the north, like the Rhinelanders, the Eagle Rivers, the cabins in the summer. So maybe the Wausau Woodsmen. I think that would be kind of
like
cool.
A little Robin Hood logo. I like that.
Yeah, kind of it could be a lot of fun. We could tie like the Disney stuff into the sports. It could all work.
Then the third one here, would you rather have the Brooks Lennon 1-of-1 Super that you need for that set, or the entire Ring of Honor set? If you get to be gifted all of them, you
Brooks
take the
Lennon
Super.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Brooks Lennon Super.
Good to know. Okay. And then a quick one here too. Biggest card sale regret, whether it's because you missed the card or, is there anything that come to mind?
Biggest card sale regret.
I guess I should say a card you let go where now you'd want it back if you could.
Ooh, I don't really have regret. I don't think there is one, because I think you learn something in everything that you do, whether it's you're upset about it. But like for me, a lot of the cards, like there are cards that I wish I didn't sell, but the money I was able to use from those sales went to other things. And so as hard as it was to let those go, so I don't think there's ever regret. Like there's a learning experience. But a lot of the cards, like I'm still at, I'm relatively new to a lot of this lower numbered stuff. So I haven't gotten to a point yet where it's like, if I give this up, if I sell this, I'm not going to be able to get it back. Because I've heard you talk about that quite a bit with some of the other people on the show, or just even in, like I keep this because I know if I sell it and it's a PSA 10 of, a Charles Woodson rookie, like I cannot get this back, or it's going to be very difficult. Where I haven't, like, I'm still kind of maybe not quite there in my collecting journey where, most of the cards I have, sold, if I really wanted them, I could go find them and get them back.
What's funny is I think your answer is the same as mine. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think everything I've done so far, thankfully, has been done for a purpose. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe 5-10 years from now, we look back and like, oh
And
my
you're
gosh,
like,
I
yeah.
wish I still had
You know,
that,
when
but
people are
whatever.
talking like, oh, I used to have,
Yeah,
N2
yeah.
RPAs of
Makes you sick
Patrick
sometimes.
Mahomes, and you're like, what?
And then final question. This is kind of a fun one here too. So basketball is a sport we didn't talk about. If you had to collect a basketball player and go pretty all in, who would that be?
Basketball player that I'd have to go pretty, probably go Giannis. I just appreciate who he is on the court and what he's able, but also who he is off the court. So I really appreciate him as a person. Being a Bucks fan, being from Milwaukee as well, it makes sense. But just, a lot of the times too, I like to collect people that, are, they seem, and it can change in a blink of an eye, but, they seem to be very, very great off the field, and then they are able to perform at extremely high levels on the field. So like good people, I think that's, for me in the hobby too, surround yourself with good people. Like I like to collect, good people.
I guess I'll throw out a bonus question. What is your favorite card show in the state of Wisconsin that is happening next weekend?
Well, I love the Stevens Point Card Show.
There you go.
They have a great person who puts it on, and it's a fantastic show. If you are anywhere in a 3-hour radius, you got to come and hang out with us at the Stevens Point Card Show. But love it, and really that's part of me too. Just loves I love the Nationals. Don't get me wrong. That was partly a sensory overload, right? But just so much going on for 5 straight days. But I wouldn't have traded it for the world and the connection I made. But like, there's something about coming to your local card show. Once you start to meet the people and the vendors and you see the same people coming through the door and you get to kind of catch up with them, the small card shows across the country, I think they're so vital for the growth of the hobby because there's so many more kids and then you can interact more in deeper conversations. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I can't wait. I can't wait to set up. I can't wait, and sometimes I'm like, I can't wait to set up and not sell a soccer card, but I really don't care because the people coming in are what make those shows great.
Yeah, I had to throw out a shameless plug. So I guess it'll be this Saturday by the time this airs. But yeah, August 12th in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So I run a show there. Me and Andrew will actually be set up right next to each other, I think. So If you're in the area, want to come swing by, say hi, feel free. But Andrew, I got to say, thanks so much for coming on. That was super fun. I appreciate it.
Hey, I really appreciate you letting me come on and talk a little bit about my collection. So I could talk all day, but I know a lot of people have other places to go. Hopefully it was enjoyable on a trip to work, or maybe somebody else was going for a run and had this in their ears, but hope you guys enjoyed it. And thanks for
I'll probably re-listen on my runs. How about that? How can people get a hold of you, and are you open to messages, and where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, please feel free. Any questions, either in soccer, football, Ring of Honor, whatever. If you have any questions, I'm at St. Croix Cards on Instagram. DM me. Let me know what you guys are doing. And if you see any of these cards, like, please let me know. It takes a hobby to kind of finish some of these rainbows and some of these collections and sets. And it's so important that we, and also let me know what you're looking for so I can keep an eye out for it too. So because we're all, I know it's going to be High School Musical, and again, I'm dating myself, but we're all in this together.
God, that's funny. Well, thanks, Andrew. This is a blast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.